Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Hello, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
We are going to talk about a topic today that was inspired by a professional development session that I attended. But before we do that, I want to just shout out two places real quick because we've done it at the end. Now we've started to do it a little bit at the beginning. Stick with us. Yeah. I know. I kind of like it at the beginning. Yeah. So we want to shout out two places that have not been in our top ratings before that now are around the world, Finland.
Oh, hi, Finland.
And then in the United States, New Hampshire.
Oh, hi, New Hampshire.
I have not been to Finland, but I really do love New Hampshire. I have been there. My car, not the car I have now, but years ago, my car climbed Mount Washington.
Oh, nice.
Right. I've also taken the train up Mount Washington, stayed randomly in New Hampshire in different places. So love it there. Glad you're listening.
Yeah.
And Finland, maybe I'll get there someday too.
Yeah. I would like to go to Finland one day.
Right? Yeah. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
We hope that you will tell other people to come and listen about topics other than this, but I think maybe as compelling.
Yes.
I recently attended a professional development session having to do with gender, expectations, and early childhood. You can also watch that session if you go to Early Childhood Investigations webinars. Just look that up. And you look at their recordings of prior webinars, you will see the session there. Oh, it was widely attended, folks. At one point during the call, they said there were 4,000 people.
Wow, that's a lot.
I can't imagine. 4,000 people logged in to learn about gender expectations and early childhood education. You know, it's definitely a hot topic. It's something that many of us did not grow up thinking about, have to learn about, need better approaches for. And I'm not going to at all try to steal their thunder or take their knowledge from them. I'm just going to share one thing they said that really prompted me to think about the advice that I may give early childhood settings when I work with them with their administrators and in a consulting role. And I hope something for you all to think about and maybe advocate for in your settings. Yeah. It is not new that we will have children in our classrooms, particularly in the dramatic play area, experimenting with things that we would typically associate with a particular gender. They are over there exploring with the dress-up clothes and roles that they may step into and pretend to be and all sorts of things. It is certainly not news that there are people who get upset, families and caregivers who are raising children who get upset when they come into our programs and they see things like one of the boys wearing a dress, one of the girls being a construction worker. You know, there are a variety of things that may or may not upset families, but I hear a lot of stories about how am I supposed to handle this? Mm-hmm. This is what the child wants to do. So there I am on this session with 4,000 people. They open up the Q&A for people to type in questions. It was scrolling by so fast that I could barely read it. What I did notice when I was kind of digging into it and frankly posting my own questions and statements was that there were a number of questions saying, how do we handle it when? How do we handle it when a child wants to explore this sort of clothing, that sort of pretend play, this sort of book, and the families get very upset? And they said, basically, it really needs to be part of our policies that we don't put children in a gender box in this program. Mm-hmm. That it shouldn't be a conversation that happens on the fly when someone sees their child do something that upsets them. This should be something we tell them up front in our policies at enrollment, explaining to them why children, or the fact that, I guess, children at this age are simply exploring the different roles and people in their world. When children pretend they're trying to figure it out, and figure out the world around them, children are explorers. This is sort of how they put it. They are explorers and scientists and experimenters, and they will do that without the sort of inhibitions that adults may have. That we need to, in our policies, explain pretend play to people, explain why children do it, how children do it, the fact that they do it in a free and uninhibited way, and that in our program, we do not force children into gender boxes and have parents sign off on this. Yes. Or other people who are raising the children. Just like they sign off on your attendance policy, expulsion policy, illness policy, or whatever other policies you have, this should be right in the packet.
I agree with that. I agree with that because I was recently told that I have to comply with whatever a parent says, which because we don't have this policy, right? So but that's really hard when this child really, really wants to play in that area in that way. And then I feel like the whole point of what I do is you freely choose and this is how you learn. And then it's limiting. And then now this child is upset because he can't play what he wants to play in the way he wants to play. But it's
not only is it limiting, but when we do that, we send a message to children that there's something wrong with them, that they are not normal. There's something weird here. What you're doing is unacceptable. Just like when we would, years ago, when adults looked at children and said, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. And so children took their feelings and stuffed it inside, and everybody's in therapy now. Same thing. We look at children and we say, you are not allowed to put that on. You are not allowed to pretend that. You are not allowed to do that. And they want to explore and experiment. We're saying to them, there's something bad about this.
Yeah.
Repress it. Put it inside, and you end up with children as they get older and startling statistics about children hurting themselves in a variety of ways. The statistics are absolutely incredible. I really hope you all will look for that information, that session. I totally agree with this whole policy thing. Yeah, at the same time, it's something I myself would have never thought to put in my policies.
I know, right?
And I wonder why we don't even think it. If we have people in classrooms who are consistently saying this parent is objecting to this parent, what do I do? How do I handle it? Why have we never thought to be proactive and say, this is our policy?
Yeah.
Is it out of fear that we think people are not going to want to enroll? Not every program is for every person.
I think that is it. I think they're afraid that parents are going to get upset or unenroll or not sign up or whatever it may be. But also, if we start making this a policy, it's going to hopefully spread to many, many schools, and parents are going to maybe have trouble finding one that doesn't have this if this is something that becomes more typical.
Well, wouldn't
policy.
That be nice?
Wouldn't that be
nice? I mean,
right?
The state tells us where we are that you must have an expulsion policy, you must have an illness policy.
So, yeah.
You must have, there are other policies you must have.
Yeah. But
I don't know that they are going to stand up and say, you must have a non-discriminatory, I don't even know how to put it.
I don't know how you would put it.
You must have a policy related to gender and your approach with the young children. I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe that policy needs to say things like, in our program, we are, we don't force children into gender boxes. We don't discriminate against families. We like the whole thing,
Yeah.
like we here are very open. If you're listening to us, by the way, and you think, yeah, we need that policy, I hope you will go back and tell somebody.
Yes.
If I know how hard it can be to have a child and not have them grow up to be who you expected them to be when they were born, or what our expectations were. The bottom line is, if we try to put children in these boxes, we are harming their mental health.
Yes.
Right? So we need to think about, what are we doing? What are we trying to protect by not allowing these things? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I feel like it's deep too. It's really deep. Like, because like I was telling you before we came on here, is I went to open up more costumes for my classes this week because I needed more costumes in there, more dress up clothing and stuff like that. And the stuff that they gave me was actually labeled girl and boy, girl and boy. And I was like, well, why can't it just be a neutral outfit? Why does it have to be specifically labeled for girl, for a boy? And it's like, this is like stuff that was recently purchased. It's not like I found it and it was from like the 80s when I grew up. It was like,
was it like recently, how can I put this? Recently purchased from one of those places that sells things for young children, whose parent company is very opinionated, based in a certain belief system,
one of these,
religion, something like that.
I forget the company, but it's definitely a very
You'll tell me offline.
Yeah,
okay,
early
Alison's
childhood
tell me offline.
company. And
all right,
I'm just saying,
you'll tell
yes,
me,
I will tell you offline, because it was very interesting to me that's what it wasn't like they bought them off of something else. It was like, oh wait, this is from a catalog, like a catalog that we all shop in. Okay. Like, what?
Okay.
So
you'll tell
there's
me
a lot to learn there.
Done recording. I'll fill you in on the background if I know.
Yeah.
I don't know why these things have to be labeled. And I'm going to just go back to, I don't know why we have not thought of being proactive. Maybe some of our preschool peeps who are listening actually work in a place that thought of being proactive,
that would be awesome,
and having this sort of policy. But I can tell you, I've not seen one. This seemed to be, for the people on the call, seemed to be just an eye-opening, revolutionary idea to start to develop these policies, and people start to ask questions about the wording of such policies, what should be included in these policies, and then what to do if a family gets upset when they read your policies, and what to do when a family gets upset if they read that policy, is to say to them, listen, I understand that not every program is for every person. We believe in being honest and upfront, and we hope that people will respect that. We're happy to teach anyone about how children behave when they play and why they do what they do. We have at the forefront not harming children's mental health.
Yeah, because I think that's the part that's missing here, is you're missing the opportunity to educate the adults in this situation. Because everybody comes in with their stuff. Like, we were all raised differently. Like, times were different when we were raised. So, like, you might have very, like, different thoughts of that, like that, So you're missing the opportunity to educate the families or the teachers or the other adults in the situation about, like, hey, this is how we dramatic play. This is what it teaches the children, and then you might have oh, okay, now I get it. You know what I mean? But instead, I think people are like, okay, yeah, whatever you want, and instead of actually educating about it.
And I think we've said this before when we've talked about dramatic play. When children are in dramatic play in particular, and they're taking on these roles, it's not influencing how they feel inside or who they are. They are simply expressing themselves, exploring and experimenting. And I can't, if it's a part of who they are, I can't change that. So we might as well ensure that they grow up in an environment where they feel safe and valued and loved, which I know can be a daunting thing. At the same time, I have heard so many early childhood educators talk about a child whose family doesn't want them doing XYZ, doesn't want this to see them in this, doesn't want to watch them do that. And I think it's right that we have to put this stuff in our policies.
Yes.
And stand for these children. Mm-hmm. Part of being an early childhood educator, one of our professional obligations is to advocate for the children. That's who I'm here to advocate for what's good for the children. And I think it's just a sad situation that people may resist having this sort of policy because they're worried about money and profit. Yep. and that sort of thing. It's sad, and it's what makes early childhood education that is entangled with business a particularly complicated situation.
Yes. Yes.
Right. I think it's I think it is. And I think that we sometimes have to sit with ourselves and think about, why are we here? Who does the mission point to?
Yes.
The mission should point to the children.
Children, always, yeah.
Right? What do we need to do to ensure that we're providing a good, healthy, safe environment for these children to grow up in? And sometimes we have to have policies that we have to just stand by. I wish you were right, Alison. I wish this was something that's just commonly found. Yeah. So no matter where you go, kind of like the illness policy, no matter where you go, it's going to basically be the same. Yep. Mm-hmm. If your child, has diarrhea or vomits twice, that child has to go home. It has to, your child has to be fever free for 24 hours. I can recite it, and it's probably the same everywhere. All over the place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There are also expulsion policies where you have to go through X number of steps before you can expel a child. We're going to meet with the family. We're going to come up with a plan. We're going to enact that plan for X amount of time. We're going to meet again. We're going to seek this help. Everybody has these policies. And this is I feel like the one thing that people are not thinking of.
I agree with that. And I wish people would put more of a positive spin instead of sitting there saying, hey, we might lose families because of this, or people aren't going to sign up because of this. But what if you attract people because you have that policy? Imagine that. Yeah.
I would imagine it depends where you are, what your demographic is in your area.
Yes.
But you never know. You never know who's going to be like, I respect that, or thank you for letting my child play the way that my child prefers to.
Right.
Thank you for not micromanaging my child.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I want my child to be in a place where they're not limited and not managed and not told that what they're doing is not normal. You know what I mean? Like, you might attract people. But nobody thinks like that. They always think like, people aren't going to sign up. It's like, no, like, why don't you think the other way? Hey, maybe we'll attract a group of families that really want these policies, because there might be families out there, you never know, that are looking for that kind of thing and they can't find it.
I don't know. I think that there are plenty of families who don't want their children micromanaged. And I think there are plenty of people who understand that part of what children do in early childhood is that exploration and experimentation, and that's okay. Yeah. It's not every family, folks. We tend to also do that. We generalize.
It's everybody. Yeah, it's everybody.
It's everybody. When you say to people, you should be doing developmental screening, they think, I'm going to have 20 difficult conversations with families. That's not true. It's not true. It's not true. The vast majority of children are where we expect them to be in their development. And it's kind of like this too. It's not true that every parent is going to object to this policy. There may be a small minority. I would bet, though, that you're down the road, if we don't have these policies as proactive, down the road, when they walk in and their child is doing that thing that they didn't want their child to do, whatever it is, you're going to have a problem with them then anyway.
Yes.
They're going to leave your program then anyway if it persists.
Yeah. They're going to leave anyway. Yeah.
These are people who may not be a match for the philosophy of your program.
Right. And I think not every school is for everybody. Yeah.
Right. Not every place is for everyone. Right. There's a place for everyone, but it's not necessarily your place.
Yeah, yeah.
And let them seek what they want then. Maybe they need to realize that in this sort of early childhood setting, that their personal beliefs and values are not going to be reflected, and they need to go and try and find another sort of educational opportunity for their children.
Yeah.
There are times where I think when we're not proactive like this, that we're setting up the conflict. We're our own worst enemy. We are creating situations where there's going to be an issue down the road. Might as well say it up front.
Yes.
And frankly, I wish that when I was a program director, that I had this knowledge and information, because I would have gone to the board and said, I think we need a policy that states this, because this is the philosophy of our school and our program. And I have to tell you, I think that there would have been discussion. I think it would have been one of those hotly discussed topics, but I think it would have ended up with, we need a policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because without it, what do we have? We have conflict. Without your illness policy, think about it. Without your illness policy, there's conflict.
There's conflict.
Without your attendance policy, there would be conflict. Think about all the policies. Why do we have them? To prevent uncomfortable situations with conflict and disagreement.
Right.
And yet we've got this consistent disagreement happening that we all hear about.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Preschool peeps, I hope you will give this some thought.
Yeah.
And go back, if you need to go back to someone in charge. If you are somebody who's in leadership where you work, really think about what wording you can put in that would protect the children's right to play the way that they choose to play.
Yeah.
And to explore the way that they choose to explore. All right, I think that's enough controversial topic for one day. What do you think, Alison?
Yeah, I think that's good.
I do too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we shouted out the people already. What else do we need to do? We need to remind people to find us on Facebook, check out our website, go to Patreon, look us up on Patreon. And that's it. I think that's all the homework for this week as we end the month of February.
Yeah. Wow.
We will be back next week, as always, saying hi to March.
I know.
Okay, preschool peeps, go think all this over, and we will catch you next time on the podcast.
Bye, peeps.
Bye, peeps.